Good evening, Huyenand, dumelang bana beso, liperile, ukhande, sanbonani nonke makaya. Hey, kuyabande Gauteng. We are greeting you from very cold Johannesburg. Specifically, maybe let me say East Johannesburg in a place called Vosloorus, where we are broadcasting from tonight. So good to have you tonight with us. We are trusting that, as usual, we'll be having an excellent and informative program for you tonight. So I'm not alone as always. I have a co-pilot, my deputy, Wayne Thring. He also is broadcasting from another world. We are all from different angles, different areas, but we are all together in the name of the Lord to share with you some good news, some good things that God is doing. So, my co-pilot, let them hear your voice, say.
No, thank you, President. And yes, indeed, just as it is cold out in Gauteng, we are experiencing similar weather here in the Western Cape, with the cold front having passed, with some rain and some cold. Our hearts are also with the people in KwaZulu-Natal, where I believe strong winds and rain have caused some damage, and power lines are down, and people are in the cold, without electricity, and some presidents also without electricity and water, as a result of this cold front that has swept through the country. But for those of you who have joined in, I trust that you have a nice warm jacket on, a cup of tea, coffee, hot chocolate, whatever it is that keeps you warm, a little blankie perhaps over your knees. Join in. As our president has indicated, we have an informative session for you tonight, and we know that you're going to be blessed. And as I always say, remember that South Africa needs the ACDP, and the ACDP needs you. Good evening.
Well, good evening. Let me introduce, it's a regular guest, not really a guest, because it's a pilot, we'll call him a guest. Our member of parliament and our chief whip in our parliament, Honorable Steve Swart, is with us tonight. You'll be hearing from him. We'll tell you later what he'll be talking about. And as this is Youth Month, we have a young man who has joined us tonight by the name of Lamar Peters. So, Steve, welcome, and Lamar, welcome also. So good to have you tonight. And maybe let's start with the young man, Lamar, and then we'll follow from there and then take it further. But Lamar, before we come to you, let's hear what our fellow members and who are always with us are saying tonight. Are they happy? Are they cold? What's happening? How are they surviving? But we are glad to have them tonight. All right, the first one is David Mukwena. He says, "Good evening, my beloved leaders. I can't wait to listen to your informative session. May the good Lord bless you with much wisdom." David, thank you so much. The same to you.
Second, we have Sipho Eric Mangele, PL from KZN. Greetings to our President DP, Woman of Destiny President, wherever he is, and all lovely members of the ACDP. We are looking forward to being inspired by more good news from our leaders. God bless you all, and the Lord bless you too, Bishop.
Then we have the chairman of the ACDP, Mr. Raymond Tlaedi, who says, "Greetings to our president, deputy president, and the ACDP family. It's exciting to be part of these empowering national issues." RT from freezing cold Gauteng. Okay, he calls himself RT. Those are his initials. Thank you, Ntate Tlaedi.
Nora Mali, good evening, leaders and ACDP family. Happy to be part of the powerful session. Good evening, Nora, and glad you could be with us.
Mr. Bennett Hathrill. Greetings from Joanne and Bennett Hathrill in Durban North. Awaiting another interesting evening.
Mongani Ngema, good evening, Mr. President, Honorable DP, and the ACDP family. Good evening, Bongani.
Now we have Kes van der Bijl-Meth. He says, good evening, my president and DP, from a very cold and wet South Coast. I'm glad I'm not in the South Coast and also not in Cape Town. I don't like wet and cold combined. If we have wet, let's have wet. If we have cold, let's have cold. But hey, to have them both, you are blessed to survive in such a weather. So, Yes, one more time says, good evening, my president and DP from a very cold and wet South Coast. So good to connect once again.
Palesa Yates, who is short and sweet, and she says, good evening, leadership. Good evening, Palesa. Linda Yates.
Then who do we have now? Christopher Wallace Payton. Good evening, President and leadership. He is like Palesa, very short and to the point. Good evening, Chris.
And then we have Christian Rolson. Warm greetings to you, dear Mr. President DP and the awesome ACDP family. Every blessings to you all, and blessings back to you, Christian.
Thank you so much. We receive those blessings, sir. Prudence Mabasa. Good evening, President, Deputy President, and the Holy Army of God. From all of us in the ACDP Youth Foundation, good evening, Prudence.
Moses Poi. Good evening, Mr. President, DP, and the ACDP family. Good evening, Moses. Good to have you back again.
Yes. Good evening, Moses. Good evening, Moses. Okay, those were the greetings for tonight. As I suggested, we are going to listen to the young men first. Normally, guests come at the end, but tonight, because it's Youth Month, we start with the guest and we start with our very, very youth leader in the Western Cape. Welcome, Lama. What you need to tell our members about is you will be attending and speaking at the Youth Parliament. Please tell them, what is Youth Parliament? What is Youth Parliament planning to do or trying to achieve? And then lastly, what are you going to say in the Youth Parliament? So please encourage our listeners, particularly young people, so that next time they will all want to say, I want to be part of this Youth Parliament. I want to be part of this Youth Parliament. So Lama, it is now your turn to tell us more about maybe you first and then Youth Parliament.
Thank you, Mr. President. Greetings once again to the DP. Greetings to the Chief Whip as well. So yeah, it is quite cold here in the Western Cape, in the Cape Town. Yes, I'm Lamar Peters. Currently studying political science, and I am the chairperson of the Western Cape Youth Foundation here. So just to speak about the Youth in Parliament, the ACDP is partaking in the Youth Parliament that's happening this Friday, just to give a small breakdown and not just to go into depth. So the Youth Parliament, the P20 Youth Parliament, it stems out the G20 that's happening in November this year in South Africa. So the purpose of the Youth Parliament, the P20 Youth Parliament, is the agenda that's going to be, or the topics that's going to be discussed, and it's about just bringing voices together. That's the center stage right now currently, because we are 65% of the population of South Africa. So it's youth coming together to make a stance, to bring across to government that we have a voice, and the voice needs to be heard. So the agenda that has been brought forward, it will be discussing about employment, meaningful youth engagement, inclusive social development, African development, and access to education. So just to break it down, President, and how we as the ACDP Youth Foundation really is going to take this forward to Parliament, Youth Parliament on Friday. I'm very excited as well, because this is my first time interacting and addressing such a big stage. So what we as the ACDP Youth Foundation has brought to the table, and we have interacted with professors, we've interacted with members of Parliament, we have interacted with different stakeholders as well, to give us the best, to bring forward to the table and really give South Africa hope for the future, because we understand that the youth is a powerful weapon, especially when the youth understands its purpose in South Africa. So what we as the ACDP Youth Foundation that's going to be discussed while I'll be making my speech will be about empowerment. We're going to encourage the youth that we have the ability to speak, act, and with confidence, President, and what we call it the Big Five that we're going to present to Parliament on Friday. It will be empowerment, like I said, education, the foundation of knowledge, President, the employment, entrepreneurship, and emotional and physical well-being, because we understand that those Big Five is, as we call it, is very important to not just to uplift the youth, but to give hope for better future. We understand that we need to cooperate with one another, and when I say youth involvement, President, I'm talking about not just having a say, but also keeping the government accountable. So what we mean by youth involvement, so we are setting out a way of, let's have a 1 week in each quarter where we come together, where the youth come together with the government, and we ask questions, we post policies, and we also keep them accountable. So it's not just us just speaking and giving policies and giving ideas, but also keeping the government accountable, whereas if they agree to the ideas or not, and how far has they implemented or not, President. So I really think that the ACDP youth has a really a powerful set of brains, because as we came together week in and week out, just to prep myself and to prep the ACDP also youth as we go in Friday. I think there is great minds in the ACDP Youth Foundation, Mr. President. And so as we go forward in this last week of preparation, I really have confidence in the ACDP, and as well as we going forward after, let the youth reclaim the mic. So thank you, President. That's just a small insight what's going to happen on Friday. Thank you so much.
I'm sure some of the viewers have questions to ask. Can we have 1, 2, or 3 questions at most to our young Lamar, who will be representing the ACDP at the Youth Parliament, and we'll deal with those questions before we move on to another subject and before we release him. Any question? Or DP, you want to jump in and while they're thinking of questions and say something about this Youth Parliament, because you are part of it and you are also going to give a speech in Parliament about. You gave a speech actually.
I spoke this afternoon on the Youth Day, and the youth also, and just preparing the youth for the 4th Industrial Revolution, and how prepared are the youth for that. And it's a challenge in South Africa, Lamar, I think, particularly with the employment statistics, youth unemployment at just over 63%, unemployment in South Africa 32.9%, and on the expanded definition of unemployment sitting at over 43%. But I'm interested, Lamar, to hear, you mentioned, I think, 5 pillars. In South Africa, we talk about the triple challenges of poverty, unemployment, and inequality, but you've mentioned 5 key aspects. Perhaps if you could mention the other 2, I may have missed them, that you also would be focusing on as the five focus areas.
Thank you, DP. So the first one's empowerment, the second one's education, The third one is employment. Fourth is entrepreneurship. And the fifth one is emotional and physical well-being. That is the 5 pillars that the ACDP is going in and emphasizing on those things on Friday. Thank you, DP.
Excellent. Excellent. I think particularly the emotional aspect, your EQ, they say, is actually more important than your IQ. So if young people can understand, developing their EQ, their emotional intelligence, it sets them up also for their future progress. So I think you're onto something awesome. So to those that have been working together with the young people, congratulations on just helping and assisting the youth to this particular stage. And Lamar, we also wish you well as you go and represent the ACDP, and we know that you're going to make us proud. Thank you.
Thank you, DP.
Thank you, Lamar. You definitely have great ideas, and we enjoyed what you shared with us tonight. And DP, thank you for your contribution. Now we want to move to something that happened in Parliament this afternoon. We always make a given time to make statements about anything political. I raised 2 issues myself. Let me read my statement to save time, because if I talk about it, I might take more time. All right? The ACDP would like to commend one of our country's most respected governance scholars, Professor William Gumede, for his courage and love for truth, transparency. He exposed what many feared to do. He stated the fact that over 1 trillion rand has been transferred to fewer than 100 politically connected individuals under the banner of Black economic empowerment. Do you know that government is always talking about BEE? But it has been established that only 100 Black people in South Africa has benefited from BEE funds. Over 1 trillion rands were spent and were stolen, were misused by the ANC to grease the hands of their comrades. So the ANC has been very wasteful. The ANC has been very deceptive. If an ordinary person claims, I support BE, I support BE, you should say, I support the enrichment of 100 people only who are connected to the ANC. Now, it is unfair, and the time must come when this BEE fund is shut down so that we relook at the strategy of how to empower other people who have not been privileged in the past. Now, he quotes, he says, this Professor Gumede, BEE only benefits a very small group of politically connected, linked to the ANC, linked to the trade unions, and the same people are empowered again and again. The respected Professor Gumede, in an explosive interview, has revealed so much that has concerned the public. He concluded by saying, this is not transformation. This is state-sanctioned looting under the guise of economic empowerment. That's the professor. And then I'm changing gears now. I say, while the ACDP highly respects individuals like Professor Gumede, the ACDP is shocked and very disturbed at the intolerant and unacceptable behavior of the anti-Israel mob that harassed Israeli runners in the Comrades Marathon in KZN on Monday. Harassing athletes from a particular country during an international event, particularly motivated by hatred, is against the rules of the governing global sporting competition. That is why the ACDP strongly condemns such intolerant behavior. Ladies and gentlemen, this is, many say it is free South Africa. And the very people who deny others the right to choose their sport, the right to visit wherever they want to visit, to have the occupation of their choice, they are being the very ones who undermine the rights of others. It is unfair that athletes from different parts of the world came to South Africa to participate in this Comrades Marathon. And they saw how the ANC Youth League harassed these Israeli athletes. One of the important, unfortunate things that happened, you saw some of these anti-Israeli individuals, those who hate Israel with a passion, targeting ordinary people who are participating in the games. Now, the mob that was there on Monday was reportedly urged on by the ANC Youth League that apparently published a statement prior to the race indicating its opposition to the participation of Israeli runners, and then published the alleged identities and race numbers of Israeli participants, encouraging the public to harass them. Ladies and gentlemen, let me stop here. Let me stop reading here. It is unfair, and I wish and pray that our ACDP members will always remember that we should not have room to hate anybody in our hearts. People think differently. People behave differently. People have different choices. But please, if you are an ACDP member, we are not allowed to hate. Let people disagree with us. Let them argue if they want to argue. They can hate us if they want to hate us. But we, representing the King of Kings and the Lord of Lords, Jesus Christ, we dare not hate anybody. So I trust that what the ANC Youth League did to the Israeli runners will be condemned. If you hear about it, if you hear people talking about it, you must say it is wrong. Because those Israeli guys are not soldiers, are not the ones you saw in Gaza. They just happen to be Israelis. So please, we remember, we love everybody. We love everybody, and we do not want to harass anybody. We want everybody to feel at home. All the other runners who are there, they have reported, they are going to report in their different countries. Look what South Africa is like. Look how intolerant South Africans are. Whereas we know that it is just a minor number, tiny group of people within the ANC that is this highly intolerant. And I'm grateful to say it is not everyone in the ANC who's like them. There are some people in the ANC who believes it's in the right to choose, who go to Israel, but they don't talk about it because if they talk about it, they are going to be condemned and harassed. How intolerant this ANC is. But ladies and gentlemen, I think that's enough about that. Let's shift the gears now and invite our Deputy President. Our Deputy President, obviously, we share common ideas on a number of things, and I'm going to ask him to tag on to what I just said and share with us what is on his heart. Okay, but before DP comes in, Robert Nicol says, surely the POP Act, actually it's POPI Act, does not permit personal details to be divulged. Where did the ANC Youth League get that info? A good question. We have rules, we have laws, but they are on paper, but they're not implemented even by government. So it is government that revealed, or it's government Department of Sports that gave out that information. You are right about the POPI Act that does not allow people's personal information to be branded about, to be given to anybody else. You are right, sir. But DP, please come on board, sir. Let's hear how you think we need to do to counter this kind of hatred that comes from the ANC Youth League and also even from some leaders within the ANC.
President, there are two things that you raised, and one is the aspect of the shameful attacking of Israeli athletes during the Comrades Marathon that you addressed in Parliament. And we want to thank you, sir, for the bold stance that you actually took. And it's one of the things that many people don't understand, the vitriol that has to be faced when one stands in support of our biblical position with regards to the right for Israel to exist as a nation. So I want to just tag onto that a bit. And then secondly, the aspect of triple BEE, broad-based Black economic empowerment. And so as I said, President, I think that it was actually shameful. But fortunately, you were able to conclude your speech. But as you were concluding, there was the heckling and comments that were being thrown around by supporters of Hamas in Parliament in particular. But despite the heckling and despite the vitriol that we sometimes have to face, the position of the ACDP is a principled stance. And I agree, one needs to question, how did the details of those runners, how were those details actually disseminated? How did the ANC Youth League get a hold of them and give them to supporters of Hamas? And as they were saying within the video, those who supported the Palestinians. But President, I think then we must also note, while I was preparing for one of my committee meetings, actually last night, and we get these documents that can be, about 100 or so pages long, and you have to do some speed reading. But I captured in the back of my mind one of the settings in terms of one of the lines in the Department of Trade and Industry with regards to geopolitical tensions. And so they were looking at the geopolitical tensions as a result, for example, Russia and Ukraine. And then there was just a one-liner, as well as Palestinian or tensions in Palestine, I think was how it was phrased, tensions in Palestine. Now one has to be very careful here to take note of the wording, because what it appears, though, then is that government and the ANC in particular appear to be wanting to whitewash and remove the history of Israel as a nation and as a nation state, with having the sovereignty, also the backing of the 190 odd member states of the United Nations, and about 140 to 150 of those nation states actually supports the establishment of Israel as a nation. Largely only your Arab states that have rejected the acceptance of Israel as a nation when Israel became a nation in 1948. So here we have just that one-liner in the documents that were sent to us, that they're looking at tensions in Palestine. Now, President, you would also note that in Parliament, you'd hear some of the chants, free Palestine, from the river to the sea, Palestine will be free. The question then is, if it's from the river to the sea, from which river? I know that Israel is bounded by the Jordan River. It's on its eastern side, and on the western side, you have the Mediterranean Sea. So those who chant from the river to the sea, Palestine would be free, what are they actually chanting? Is this now calling for, like in the Hamas Charter, calling for genocide? Is this calling for the elimination of the Jewish people as a nation, wherever they are, that they be terminated, which is what Hamas has actually said? And so here we have people shouting these particular slogans, and some, unfortunately, even some Christians will shout from the river to the sea, Palestine will be free. What that essentially means is the extermination of the people of Israel as a nation. And as the ACDP, sir, we have indicated our position. We believe in the right of Israel to exist as a nation.
Thank you, DP. I think it is important for members who are Christians to remember that the land that they talk about when they say from the river to the sea is the land that God gave to Abraham and his descendants. And Abraham, obviously, you know, he had two wives, one Hagar and the Sarah. But the Bible clearly states, and we don't want to go into Bible study about that history, but the Bible clearly states that God made a covenant with Isaac, the son of Sarah. The promise was made to Abraham, to Isaac, Jacob, and their descendants. But these guys are acting as if the Bible should not be considered the Bible is a lie. Every serious Christian must stand for what the scriptures say. Because if you don't agree with the scriptures, I predict and I warn that you will not meet the King of Glory. You may say, I love Jesus and all that stuff, but those who disagree with his word, those who disagree with what the Bible says are in trouble, So I want to encourage you, please, align yourself with the scriptures. When you talk about the people who want to eradicate all Israelis, annihilate them, remove them from the face of the earth, they are convinced that their scriptures are correct. And they follow the doctrine of their scriptures without fear or favor. But Christians are the ones who compromise. I want to urge you, please don't compromise. Don't compromise. And don't be ashamed of what the word of God says. We can testify about how the Lord Jesus saved us and changed our lives. How we can boldly say we have eternal life. When we live, or when we die, we live and die for him. So please, Israel needs the support of Christians. I didn't mean to say this, but after I saw how some of these Israeli haters were running parallel with these Israeli runners, Israeli athletes, saying, go home, go home, go home. Palestine will be free. Free Palestine. Go home. And also holding the flag of Palestine. You know, the police tried to stop them, but these guys were too clever, maybe, or too strong for the police. But we feel sorry for those when the God of Abraham, Isaac, and Jacob unleashes his judgment and his wrath on those who persecuted his people. Now, having said that, now we want to come to our chief whip, Honorable Steve Swart. Tomorrow in Parliament, another great day, there will be a discussion of the bill on appropriations. So Steve is going to tell us what this appropriation bill is about, what the debate tomorrow will be about, as tomorrow you'll realize that we will not be in our normal or usual building, but we'll be in the International Center, International Business Center, Conference Center. Thank you. International Conference Center tomorrow. So Steve will be speaking on our behalf tomorrow. Steve, what will be the debate about tomorrow, sir?
President, good evening to you, sir, and the DP and all the ACDP family. And thank you so much for the input about Israel. And from Lamar, we're really looking forward to the Youth Parliament. And thank you for your bold stand for Israel. It's the right thing to do, President. It's absolutely disgraceful. But just to quickly speak a little bit about this being the third presentation of a budget for this year. And that mainly is as a result of the fact that the VAT increase was totally rejected by the ACDP and other parties, and that resulted Not the first budget, not the second budget, but the third budget being presented. And that was presented last month in May. And the first step in the acceptance of this budget will take place tomorrow, when the fiscal framework and the revenue proposals will be debated in Parliament. This is an important first step, because from then on, we have the division of revenue, which is how the funds are allocated from national, provincial, and local government. And then we start going into all the different budgets for every department. And we'll be very busy the next few weeks as we have those debates, up to 6 a day, as we go through that whole process, which will culminate at the end of July, when all those budget votes are put again. And then we have another debate on the appropriation bill in general, and to see whether it is to be accepted or not. So tomorrow is a very exciting first step. And as you correctly pointed out, President, it will take place because of the importance of tomorrow's debate, not in the Good Hope Chamber. It won't be hybrid. We will all be there, and there will be a vote taken. And you remember when the last fiscal framework, there was a vote taken. We opposed it because of the VAT increase, and there was a lot of issues around that whole issue. But tomorrow is a significant date. Now, what is significant about the presentation of this new budget is, of course, the fact that the VAT increase has been removed. And we're very grateful for that. But in the place of that, we see a fuel levy increase. And so I'm going to say tomorrow that if this is to be accepted, why has there not been the promised investigation into the whole fuel levy? Because that impacts everyone. And that is a very important point, because the minister has said they will look into the whole issue of the fuel levy. Secondly, our biggest concern is the issue that all these projections, President, when you present a budget, you project certain things for the year, and it is predicated on economic growth, which we said already in March, when it was projected at 1.9% of gross domestic product, GDP, was unrealistically high. Now it's been dropped to 1.4%. And the question is that also attainable? And that a lot of questions are asked around that, because if that's not attainable, then all your revenue projections and your expenditure projections are then brought into question. Why do I say, and I'm going to say this tomorrow as well, why do I say that the ACDP questions the modeling of economic growth? Because we already in the first quarter of 2025 have only had growth of 0.1%. How are you going to go from 0.1% all the way up to 1.4% in the space of 1 year? And so even the Finance Committee, in its report, which we deal with tomorrow, has questioned National Treasury's modeling when it comes to economic growth targeting. And I'm going to say tomorrow that for the last 10 years, the economic growth models have not materialized. And so what happens is every year, the economic growth is low, therefore your revenue is low, therefore there's a budget deficit between what is collected through tax and what is spent, and that results in an increase in debt levels. Now, President, can you believe that our debt is reaching 6 trillion rand? 6 trillion rand. That is 77% of our GDP. For developing countries like South Africa, it should only be 60%. And at one stage, in the early years after 1994, around about 2000, it was down to 35%. Now it's shot up, with the result that most of our funds are spent in debt service costs. And if I was to ask the viewers how much is spent per day just on servicing debt, it is 1.2 billion rand. Now, President, coming from a Christian perspective, does Deuteronomy 28 not say that if you're obedient to my commandments, you will loan to other nations and not borrow from them? So there's obviously something wrong here. And that is because we are not obedient to God's word. The government has taken Israel to the court, we see to the international court, and we see this as a result of that. We also see ungodly laws, abortions taking place, murders, rapes, and so we are not in God's blessings. But so tomorrow, what are the good news? Well, the good news firstly was the fact that the VAT increase has been removed. Secondly, that personal income tax was not increased, although there's a indirect taxation, and that means your bracket crease, your bracket creep has not been allocated. So every year when people in the private sector receive salary increases, it can put them into a higher tax bracket, which then cancels their salary increase because they now have to pay more tax. And every year the tax scales are changed to accommodate that. Now that's been removed. So there's an indirect tax by stealth. These are some of the aspects that are of concern to us. When you then look, of course, if you are, what we've been saying as well is we need to spend more on infrastructure as opposed to consumption. There's R1 trillion being set aside over the medium term for infrastructure. Now that's good, but President, as you correctly pointed out earlier, how much of that is going to BEE partners? And it is staggering. It is staggering. We hear that not only do BEE companies get the work, but they're allowed to charge a premium. When it's a 50 million rand, up to 50 million rand, they can charge an extra 25% of that just because it's a BEE company. So you get the job, and then you can charge over and above another 25%. When it's over 50 million, it's 11% premium, and that runs to hundreds of billions of rands per year. That is wrong. And thank you, President and DP, for raising this in Parliament, that we oppose the Black economic empowerment because it is only benefiting a few people. Obviously, President, the biggest issue is unemployment, as DP you pointed out. So you need economic growth to stimulate job creation and revenue collection. Well, what are our constraints? And if I've got time tomorrow, I would like to also mention some of the constraints to economic growth, which mainly have been in the past power. And we already see that there could be power outages now going into winter. There's a relative power stability. But secondly, water provision. Many, many big companies need water. And we know there's water crises. And then logistics. There's a crisis with logistics. Our exports are not getting to the harbors, are not getting to the rails in time, and we're losing tens of billions of rands through our exports. And then, of course, as the DP always says, beneficiation, we're not benefiting our exports. So there are a number of aspects there that the ACDP has got excellent proposals to stimulate economic growth quicker so that we can collect more revenue, so that we can create jobs and not have such high levels of unemployment. President, it's unsustainable, the issue of spiraling government debt. We have to also, which I've said in the past and I'll say tomorrow, taxpayers are demanding value for every cent that they spend. Rightfully so, rightfully so. And up to now, we've had such wastages through irregular expenditure, through corruption, through looting, and through unnecessary expenditure. A basic aspect such as ghost workers in the civil service. How can you have ghost workers that are drawing money and costing the state hundreds of millions of rands? It's an easy resolution. Let every civil servant come on a certain day and appear in office and count the number of people that are there, the bodies, the people that are there, and remove all the ghost workers. So, President, there's a number of issues we will be speaking about, and this is just touching on some of the issues, but I want to emphasize that taxpayers have had enough. They are demanding value for money. The ACDP has always said we stand for stewardship of state resources. State resources are not there to be stolen or to be looted. We need to look after the state resources, and we need servant leadership. So I'm looking forward to the debate tomorrow, and thank you for the opportunity to share with our viewers a few aspects as this process goes forward. Thank you, President.
Thank you very much, Steve. We have our members who are commenting, making very positive comments. Now we want to read some of the comments that come from our members. All right. Start with Marian Lotta, all the way from Port Elizabeth, saying the agenda is clear. The ANC do not care for their people. And then Kes van der Bijl-Meth says, the ministers don't care about the well-being of people. No humanity left. It's all about not losing revenue. We are struggling here in Port Shepstone with the closure of the main bridge that connects the north and the south. We have been forced to use the only alternative route, the P464, which is a death trap and in worse shape. The road is collapsing on all sides. Banks are collapsing, but we are not granted free access through an off-ramp through the toll gates. We are told we are not in a crisis. DP, there were others that maybe you need to read some even about the first subject about Israel. Let's consider what people have said, and then we will move on and come back to the next thing. What's Prudence saying, DP?
We are not in a nation that doesn't afford us freedom of religion and belief. The violent behavior should not only be condemned, but they should be brought to book. Couldn't agree with you more, Prudence.
But unfortunately, we have a government that is friends with criminals. You know, the ACDP for years we have been saying, we will be friends of law-abiding citizens, but we will be enemies of those who break the law, enemies of criminals. We will hit them hard. The time will come, listen to me carefully, before you are taken up, because some are looking forward to the rapture. The Lord is going to demonstrate on earth. The Lord is going to show people of the earth what happens when there is a leadership and a government that honors him. Because his blessings will be so much on the nation that people will ask themselves the question, why did we get this ACDP much quicker and much earlier? We would not have gone through the sufferings that we have gone through, because God is interested in blessing and keeping and ensuring that his people live in peace. And it's going to happen, because the day will come when the Lord will say, we have given these ANC people, these ungodly people, enough time. They've messed up. They've gone to the dead gods. Now let's go to those who are looking up like eagles to the God of heaven. And the blessings, as we will be honoring him, as we will be obeying him, are going to amaze people of the world. It will not be over. And I don't think Jesus will come and take us home while the world is in a mess. There has going to be a change. There has been prophecies about revival coming. So revival will come. There will come a time when people will open their eyes and they will say, we have wasted our time by not making right with God, because the time will come when he will show his love, his care, his provisions, and his blessings to people of the world. That will be when the ACDP says, Lord, we have learned, we are ready to govern. So our members, please work hard, recruit, grow the ACDP, train, study those who have the ability to study, and improve yourselves so that when the time comes, we will be ready. DP.
President, just on, before I read Grant Bernardo's comment there, you know, on the Kaz's comment, I raise it as a motion without notice. The economic hardship that the residents of Port Shepstone are being placed under. And when she says, they do not care, the deputy minister, one of the deputy ministers came to me and he says, no, there is going to be intervention. They're going to open a side road for the tolls. He says, I read it in one of the memos, but here we have it now. So on the road, on the ground, people on the ground saying that, government does not care. And so even despite the fact that one of the deputy ministers came to me and says that intervention is on its way, it's now almost a week, 2 weeks since I raised that motion without notice with regards to Port Shepstone. All right. But it's a sad fact that clearly government does not care. There was a final comment that came from Grant Bernardo, I think it is, begs another question. What other details of people, even citizens, are being circulated for political ideologies? President, is a good question. What other details? Are our details and the data safe? I think is a question that we now need to be asking.
I doubt, I mean, when you get even marketing companies sending you information you never requested, how did you know your numbers? How did they know your emails? Somebody is leaking out the information. Somebody's leaking out the information. Our data definitely, I don't think, is as safe as it should be. Okay, back to the comments of our people. We have Alan Kobe, who says the Islamists have used a new but very, where are we? Okay, the Islamists have used a new but very old tactic, the Trojan horse, and are spreading their tentacles into the bastions of power and subverting from within. Alan, you could not be better express yourself like you have done now. You are right to agree with you, Alan.
If we can recall, okay. President, the Al Jamaa have got just but two members of parliament in South African parliament, but they're using that to silence any voice that supports Israel, to the point where they're actually wanting to criminalize even members of parliament who voice their support for the nation of Israel, is saying that those particular members of parliament need to be charged and removed from parliament. That's how far these tentacles are now getting.
These guys are just showing us, they're showing South Africans, if we get authority over you guys, you are going to be denied your rights. That is why Christians have to unite. Christians have to unite and stand together. True freedom in South Africa will be enjoyed when people who fear God and who apply biblical principles are in authority. If it's the other group, we are going to be in trouble. And I want to say, as we are almost closing, the most important thing you must never forget when it comes to Israel is that they have the right to live. They have the right to exist within safe and secure borders. The war taking place in Gaza is deliberately encouraged indirectly by some forces and some people. Because, well, I once said in Parliament, actually during SONA, responding to the president's speech, that if the United Nations wants to stop that war, it can be stopped within a month. They can if they want to. They don't want to. Somebody's benefiting from that war. And that is why Christians in particular have to stand up and say, we are messengers of peace. We are ambassadors of peace. We are ambassadors of reconciliation. When people speak hatred, we don't speak hatred. We speak peace. We speak reconciliation. Do you know how many politicians are speaking against the late Nelson Mandela? One thing I liked about him, he spoke peace. Once he came into government, he changed his language. He wanted South Africans to enjoy their freedom. He wanted peace. He spoke reconciliation. But Many of his followers, they said, "Hamba kahle, hamba kahle," after he left, and they deviated from the path he charted, and then we have the remorse we have today because of people full of hatred. I pray that you never have hatred in your heart. I pray that you love everybody, even as your master expects you to love everybody. So from me, as we close, from me, thank you very much for being with us. I trust that you agree with what we are saying. We are not called to hate anybody, but we are called to contribute in building peace. We are builders of peace. We are builders of nations and not destructive forces that are destroying everything that is peaceful. Like we see those anti-Israel haters are doing. From me, thank you for tuning in. The Lord bless you and your family. Good night, and we'll hear what my co-pilot is saying as his last words.
Well, President, also just briefly, good night. Isaiah 43, the Lord says, forgetting the former things, and he says, behold, I am doing a new thing, and I will cause even rivers to flow in the wilderness. South Africa may be facing its challenges, but when we have men and women of righteousness and men and women of integrity, men and women who fear God, despite the fact that we are facing these challenges, in the midst of the barrenness, God can do and will do a new thing and will cause South Africa to be like the rivers that flow in the wilderness. South Africa can be a blessing to the many nations, even as our president has spoken. So it can be done. It is possible if you join hands with us, because South Africa needs the ACDP and the ACDP needs you.
Can be done, sir. I agree with you. And it must be done. All right? We don't want to hear about it or don't want to see it in the gallery somewhere in heaven happening when we are gone. No, no, no. We want to taste the fruit of peace, the fruit of our labor, while we have flesh and blood and we are still in this world where some people have given hope that we'll ever have peace. It is possible. We are going to have it because our God hears and answers prayer. The Lord bless you. Sleep well and good night.
Good night.